Coogs House, a fortnight is officially 2 weeks, which is also how long it's been since Houston scored a point.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs. I'm Locked On Cougs Park Rangers here bringing down Houston Cougars each and every day. I've already messed up my intro once, but we're going live with it. If you want to join the conversation but don't know what to say, tell us something fun about the game fortnight down below, because it's been a fortnight since the Houston Cougars scored a touchdown. We're here reacting, trying to make sense of Houston falling to Iowa State 20-0. That's 2 weeks in a row. Houston's been blanked in this game. I've got the whole spiel with if you're a hater or a Houston fan or whatever. I'm just a little flabbergasted and frustrated and pulling my own hair out at both Spectrum Internet and the Houston Cougars tonight. I want to talk some about the Big 12. I'm going to look around the conference because I like to do that every Saturday night to kind of see what else is going on out there. Spend my Sunday watching a lot of college football from the day before, if I'm being really honest. I want to talk some about the game as a whole, but I also just want to sit and talk about this offense for a second, because I'm starting to forget what it feels like to score a touchdown, if I'm being really frank. There were a number of plays in this game where Houston did have positive gains on offense. Some good quarterback runs. One from Zeon Chriss got called back, and that was actually funny. Tiffany said, "What offense? That's fair." I said I was going to talk about the offense as if there has been one. No, I look at what Houston's done, and there are moments in the run game that I guess I need to be open about, like having gone well. With a running back getting negative yards on the day, Houston still had 169 yards rushing. Now, they did take 31 attempts, and they did really focus on running the football. But I would say, generally speaking, getting 169 yards rushing against a top 20 team should be something to be happy about. The problem is Houston had just 72 yards passing, had, total 3 turnovers, and could not get the ball in the end zone or through the uprights. And I get to be a little flabbergasted. You look at this offense, and Houston spent the Iowa State game alternating quarterbacks. And it was interesting because I say it's not always fair, but the quarterbacks had kind of gained a lot of the blame for this, right? It's the life of a quarterback. When things are good, you're the best player in the world. And when things are not, it's all your fault. And that's not how football actually works. And I was trying to say that at times, but it certainly felt like that was a hindrance on this offense on Saturday night. Donovan had 71 yards passing. Yes, that means Zeon Chriss had a whopping 1 yard passing the football. Not great, to say the least. Again, the fact that they were in striking distance, we're going to recap the game in a second. The fact they were in striking distance this game is kind of miraculous. And I said that they didn't need a miracle to win this game, and I think that ultimately showed true. They just needed an offense. The offense, as far as play calling goes, is a conundrum, because there are times where they run the ball on 3rd and long or things like that kind of make you scratch your head. There was a moment in the 3rd quarter where Houston had the ball, I believe, the 49-yard line for 4th and 1, and opted to punt it. The punt resulted in a touchback, although I guess technically it did bounce in front of the goal line before rolling out. It resulted in a touchback, and Houston net gained 19 yards on the punt. And, at that point, I think it was either 3 or 10-0. It's 3-0. It might have been 10-0. Either way, it almost felt like going forward at the 49 and trusting the defense at that point. It's a yard. You've got a decent running attack. I don't. It's discombobulated. The trust seems interesting in where they place it. For what it's worth, I thought that switching quarterbacks worked better than I would have thought, in the sense that I couldn't necessarily tell the offense working better one way or the other, and I think that's probably the best results in a weird way. I do think I do think that the bet that you anticipate scoring some points in home football games. Um, at some point, to manufacture touchdowns, they're going to have to turn this running game into like mistake-free football, and that's kind of the only way I see this turning around is they clean up a lot of those mistakes. Houston had 7 penalties in this game. I can only remember one defensive penalty. I don't have any stats on that in front of me. I didn't annotate that as I was going through. I only recall one defensive penalty off the top of my head. So I mean 6 offensive and special teams penalties, and they all hurt. Zeon Chriss gets a nice run. There's a block in the back. The punt return before that, there was a holding call. There would have been a nice field position if there were not for that holding call, right? So these moments are hurting you, and your only good offense is this like disciplined rushing attack. And if you have longer field, that's more space for things to go wrong. So you can't have the hold on the punt, right? Frankly, Zeon Chriss had the first down before the Boogie Johnson block in the back on that quarterback run play, right? If you don't have the block in the back, you still get a first down, continue to march down the field. It was all bad on offense, top to bottom. Kenneth, who listens to a lot, says that Houston must find a quarterback or they'll lose every game they play. What's the problem? Houston has had NFL quality QBs, but now they have are QBs that belong in Division II football. I don't know where quarterbacks on the team belong, but I do think this is, as Kenneth points out, particularly gut-wrenching because Houston kind of has always, I mean, we lost Derek King and lucked into Clayton Tune. I don't think we understand how. I don't think we understood, certainly when Derek King called it quits, how fortunate some of us have been to watch so many great Houston Cougars quarterbacks going all the way back to Cobb, right? It's mind-boggling that with how great high school football is in Texas and how many great quarterbacks are across the state, that they're in the position they're in, because while they've been nothing but nice people, and Donovan Smith got nominated this week for an award based on his service in the community and being an outstanding person, the play on the field from that position has been bad and limiting. That Donovan Smith drew criticism from the play-by-play guy for missing the tight end on a switch wheel route. So that means that the tight end started to line up outside, actually, Malik Carr, and then switched to come inside and run up the seam, and then the wheel went around him and outside. And the play-by-play commentator mentioned that the guy covering Malik Carr falls down. Malik Carr's open in the end zone, and Donovan Smith opts to throw it to the wheel route. Well, again, I coach high school football, not Division I football, and the athletes I worked with were not Division I, not like Division I Big 12 quarterbacks. They were some good players, but they weren't that, right? And a wheel switch concept, the wheel route's the first read, and even Malik Carr being the second read and him not getting their side, he saw the wheel route as being more open because that's his first read. He thinks it's open enough to throw the football there. The problem was the ball was so poorly thrown. You throw a wheel route at the back of the end zone, you're coached, you tell guys, it's on every clinic tape, you put it on the back line, let your guy go get a play, right? That way your guy can like box out, go make the toe dip, whatever. And if it goes out of bounds, it goes out of bounds, whatever, right? He underthrew it by like 6 yards. And the trailing defender just had to stop and catch the interception in the end zone. Yes, it looks bad to have Malik Carr open about 10 yards in more towards the middle of the field, also in the end zone. But read one was open. I don't actually get upset about the read there. The read one was open. He just threw a bad ball. And those kind of moments continue to happen with this. And it's just limiting. And you can't, there's no positive to pull out of offense that has not scored a point since Rice. And then truthfully, if you look at the whole season, they scored a garbage time touchdown against a bunch of second and third string guys against UNLV. They go up to Oklahoma and they had they'd call it busted coverage. We'd call it open, but man-jack touchdown was the only touchdown of that game and a couple field goals. He also gave up a safety and stuff, right? And then you go to Cincinnati, you host Rice. You go to Cincinnati, get blanked. Here you get blanked, right? That's a consistent year-long problem. The offense continues to be a consistent year-long problem. I want to talk more about this game in a second. I got some comments too here. Some even kind enough to be in language we can put on the screen. Before we get too far, I do want to remind you that we are brought to you today by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And NFL fans can start the season big, as in bigger than 0 points, with a big return from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because when you put down $5, you can get up to $200 in bonus bets while you're watching things in the middle of a game, like stat lines or updated charts or play-by-plays and so on. I will say, if you're on FanDuel and you're looking at Houston Cougar games, I would start hitting the under if you have not already, because if one offense doesn't score very many points, it's really hard to hit the over. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Park Ranger Locked On Cougs. You'll break down Houston losing to Iowa State 20-0, and we're upset about it because Houston cannot find a way to score points. Now, I understand, and I was adamant, I am adamant that at this point there is some aspect of this that is just rebuilding the football program. I think that's hard for people to swallow. When we say strip it down and rebuild, we mean strip down and rebuild. And I said before they fired Dana Holgorsen, I can remember, I'm not going to pull up the clips, but I remember saying things like, they're going to lose a lot of talent when they do this because Dana's got a lot of talented guys that are, quote, Dana's guys on the roster, right? And then you see Brown and Golden and Nwankwo and a bunch of guys leave, right? And they got to rebuild it back up. So some of these lumps are intended growing pains. And for what it's worth, while we're recapping the game and we're in segment 2, I do want to talk about how well the defense played. Iowa State's an offense that has put up a lot of points on a lot of people. Through the late third quarter, they had just 3 points. Houston was on the field defensively for 35 minutes. When you factor in the style of offense they play and how much they are draining the clock by running the football, that is something that they probably don't. I mean, they anticipated at this point in the season, but schematically, you wouldn't anticipate that typically with a run-first offense like they've got. The defense, the defense at this point continues to shine at throughout the game. Again, holding that team to 20 points is nothing to sneeze at. Holding them to 3 points through basically 3 quarters is incredible. They really kind of flipped the game on a couple of explosive plays. They had a 50-yard run in the late third. I think it was inside of 3.5 minutes, even like late third. They scored a touchdown a couple plays later. 3 plays later, Houston fumbles the football, right? Like no response when you're down 10-0 there because you fumbled the football midfield hurts. And then, the next touchdown is a 77-yard run. Like those kinds of things are just like the play gets missed early and then suddenly it's off the races, right? So the defense, again, you score 20 points, you give up 20 points at home. You still feel like you should be in a game. It shouldn't feel like a blowout. And because of how bad the offense was, it really, really did. And before I get back to the offense, I want to shout out a couple guys I thought played particularly well on the defense. Anthony Holmes Jr. played phenomenal, dominated his side of the line, made them run away from him, like really, really strong. And then schematically, they started putting Carlos Allen kind of in shades that made him able to make some plays as well. Opposite A.J. Holmes, those two guys worked really well in tandem. And frankly, double teaming Keith Cooper on the play side, admittedly, he didn't have his best statistical night, but the defensive front three I thought played really, really well in this game. Jamal Morris had 10 tackles. Again, against a team that really tries to air it out some. That's impressive. He had the defensive penalty. It comes to mind when I think about the defensive penalty, and I still don't think it was one. He does technically touch Rocco Brecht, the quarterback, in the face. He really is trying to get out of the way, and he is contesting it like it's a jump shot, and then pulls his hand away and is clipping on the. Anyway, if we can't do that, I don't know if we can play football. The defense again held them to 20 points, and we'll break it down on second watch tomorrow with more thorough note taking. and have some analytics there as well, some PFF kind of stuff and all that for Monday and Tuesday. But the issue here was the offense. The couple things. Oh, this the DE that blocked touchdowns. So Zyke Strong had a moment he was in pass coverage and actually prevented a touchdown. But also this could be McLaurin, the DB. But he blitzed on the play. Anyway, he was like a downside. He came off the edge and blocked the pass in the back of the end zone, almost like, I think on Twitter I said it was like Javier Francis. Same commenter asked about, the argument against start. Well, I said this the other day, but the argument against starting Weed to me, since UTSA in 23. Yeah, okay, cool. No, since I said the other day, but I'll say it again. I think the biggest deal is the backup court. When your offense is bad, the backup quarterback's the most popular guy on campus. We've seen backup play, so now it's a third string guy. And I think the truth is that at this point, at this point, I feel like WLA has only completed one ball that went more than 7 yards downfield in the air. Everyone talks about the big pass against Sam Houston, right? But the ball was caught 7 yards past the line of scrimmage. Stacey Snead took it downfield for the other 50, whatever of that, right? The ball that was thrown super high in the air and that Joseph Manjack came down with, I guess, did travel about 13, 14 yards. That's the one I'm talking about. Like the ball to Rashawn Sanford was a short pass that Rashawn did the rest of the work with and those kind of things. I don't know that any of those were plays that are remarkable quarterback play, and they're typically being made against backup guys. When I think about him against first string guys, against when Donovan got dinged up against UCF or whatever last year, he didn't look ready to play high speed football. And so those are my kind of moments where I think about that. Other comments here. Will Truman hops in talking about we had a few tips the announcers didn't remark on. I can't tell you about tips like going into the game or tips like tip passes and stuff like that. But I do think that people look at scores from Houston games and then watch them play and are surprised to see how many talented guys there are on the defensive side of the football. You see 34 points last week, 27 points from UNLV, 20 points today, and that doesn't really tell the story of the game, unfortunately. And so I do think that that's where you see who's been paying attention, who's not. You can also see who's been paying attention and who's not based on what they think is happening offensively with, do they consider Donovan Smith a runner, right? Because he hasn't run a whole lot at Houston. That's not actually what Houston's done with him. Or they talk about Zeon Chris's big arm. Well, Zeon Chriss hasn't shown that big arm once at Houston. I was statting it, and I was talking to someone online about it. Zeon Chriss has had 19 dropbacks as a Houston Cougar this year, and he has taken off to run on 10 of them. I understand that that's a strength of his, but that's not great. Oh, tip passes. No, I think that's fair. The defense, again, gets the hand of the ball a lot. Defense has played really strong tonight. Yes, they gave up explosive plays in the late third and fourth quarters after being on the field for a long time. They were playing really well. They were on the field a long time. And frankly, it was a very humid Houston football game. Alfred brings up the offense coordinator, Alfred Matthews, longtime listener, says Barbay needs to go right now. I am not willing to go on a limb and protect Kevin Barbay by any stretch right now. But I will say, and I made this comment, I forget if it was on a tweet or in a chat. I was ranting a little bit at times, but I will say that I said something to the effect of on one of those mediums that I have trouble blaming a chef for a bad meal when the ingredients weren't great. And it feels like part of this is that, we've got guys starting that should maybe be backups, got guys elevated that should maybe be getting, red shirt reps and those kinds of things. And I want to see more put together there. I will say Appalachian State was not happy to see him go. Mississippi State was happy to see him go. So, those kind of things kind of tie up with him. But I wonder what would happen if, again, the quarterback's been bad this year. And quarterback Donovan specifically has regressed since last year, right? Last year, Donovan had moments, where the deal last year was it couldn't get all happening one time. If he was on the right page, Golden was on the right page. If he was on the right page, the offensive line wasn't. And the offensive line has actually progressed over the course of the year this year. It's not as good as last year, but it's better than it was against UNLV. And Donovan is not as good as he was last year. He's just not. There's no way to go about it or beat around the bush on it. He was, you could win with a guy like him last year if had other pieces in place to do it. Houston did not. This year, he's not good enough, and I don't think they've got a guy that is. They alternated the guys tonight, and tried, but they don't have a guy good enough. That's the unfortunate part of it. I want to talk some. We'll talk about this game and the Big 12 in the third segment. These night shows can get to be a little rambly at times. But before we get too far into this, if you're looking for tickets to Houston, the Cougs, the Astros, basketball season, whatever, go to Game Time. Game Time is the best app to get lowest prices on tickets guaranteed. Download the Game Time app today. Use code LOCKEDONCOD for 20% off your first purchase. They got all kinds of cool features in the app. You can see what your seat looks like from that row and section in that venue for that type of event. So if you're doing a concert or comedy show, theater, whatever, you can see what it's going to look like. Lowest price guarantee. If you can find seats in that same section or row cheaper somewhere else, they'll credit you back 110% of the difference. So you're getting the best deal possible. It's a great app to find tickets to whatever you're trying to do to get your mind off of Houston Cougar football lacking an offense. Go to Game Time, download the Game Time app today and create an account using code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Turn to play again. Create an account. Your redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Parker Ains here, Locked On Cougs. We usually use this segment to bounce around the Big 12, but people are hot talking about the offense. Ultimately, ironic because the offense was not hot. And some of these guys are coming in here. Will says that was quite a name. So Will says, I don't think I've favored relieving an offensive coordinator midseason since Travis Bush, but Bobstead is faithful saying we're going the way back here. Put Keenum with it as the OC. Can he will double duty while playing for the Texans? Someone says might as well try him out. I wonder if that's talking about WLA. I don't know if that's always fair. Do you think Fritz is stubborn about his offense, or they have no one? I think it's unfortunately probably more of the latter. So Sebastian asked that question about if we have no one on offense or it's Fritz being stubborn. I would point out Fritz and the staff went out and got Zeon Chriss while having Donovan Smith on the roster. So while there was the coach speak kind of things out there about like we look forward to coaching Donovan and so on, they also like went out and actively got another quarterback and are still having trouble and not necessarily starting him and not devoting themselves to either in terms of on the field production today. So I don't know that that I think that they feel like stubborn as much as they feel like their hands are tied, like behind their back, like they don't have a whole lot of options here. The MVP says third shutout. UNLV was a shutout. To be fair, there was a garbage time touchdown, and that's it. Houston last year was the first shutout. Last year's game against Kansas State was the first shutout since like 2000 or something. I can't remember off the top of my head. And they've had two, kind of three this year. That's how bad the offense has been. Houston's defense is going to be elite in a year or two. Trust in your new coach, and he will build up the program. Willie Fritz, his positional and coordinator experience is all defensive. Obviously, he's had a bunch of head coaching staffs where he's also overseen the whole thing. But I do think if you look at his teams, the trademarks tend to be good defenses and run-heavy offenses. They just usually score more points than this. Andrew says pathetic. Well, well, that's what it is. Defense wins games if and only if the offense puts up points. Iowa State doesn't put up 20 points if the offense puts up any points. I will say that's probably true, that the defense is getting longer breaks, is that if the offense is putting up points and putting pressure on Iowa State, the game was there for the taking, and it unfortunately was not taken. 57-0 on the last, that sounds 58 quarters. Oh, I guess because that's how the end of the Rice game went. It's not great. Offense is not great. Now, I will say around the Big 12, and y'all don't seem to want to talk about the Big 12, so maybe I won't. But I do think it's interesting to look around, like, on the whole, as we look around the Big 12, the conference kind of had an interesting day. Kansas falls to 1-4 and has not beaten an FBS opponent, so there may be a team Houston's got a shot with later. Oklahoma State takes their second L in a row, and they, were hoping to win the conference, so they may have fallen out of that. Right now, Tech is beating the crap out of Cincinnati, so I don't want to think about the Tech side of things. Arizona's beating Utah, and I don't know that I want either one of them to win that game. It's pretty early, though, because it's out west. The shock of the day, I think, was Colorado putting a big beat down as they did on UCF in Florida. But honestly, I think that there was some, UCF's going to be good. They've clearly invested a lot. It takes some time, as we're seeing in Houston. I look at this team across the Big 12 and where it fits in, and I don't think we're on different pages if I say this is the worst offense in this conference. I do think, though, that the defense is one of the better ones. And as I look at the conference, I look at Colorado probably has the best player. I don't know if you'd consider Travis Hunter a corner or a receiver, but he might be the best defensive player on the field, a true lockdown number one corner type guy. But I kind of like our secondary as a unit more, right? Kansas State's got a very tough, stout defense, but I don't know if they've got anyone like Keith Cooper, and we saw AJ Holmes ball out today. I guess Utah is the guy that's at the front, the people at the front of the conference or whatever. And so, admittedly, I've watched like a game of theirs this year. The quarterback's like 37 years old, but he's not the one playing anymore. He got hurt, I think, right? And so I think if Houston's going to win Big 12 game this year, it looks like it would be Kansas, if no one else. And it also looks like in that game, I think you got to score some points to win a football game, technically. TCU next week. TCU is underachieved this year. It would be fun and funny to beat them at their place. You do have to score some points. Kansas is technically a road game, but it's a road game in that, you have to go up to play an Arrowhead, which is like an hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that from Lawrence. Utah at home's going to be tough. Kansas State at home's going to be tough. Arizona, you finish with Baylor and BYU. BYU might be good, but Baylor's not. There's winnable games on the schedule if you can just score some points. And we're going to, I guess, have to figure out how to talk about winning games without scoring. I don't know. Kick more field goals, make more field goals. Recruits kicker that kicks 60 field goals. Viable offense literally could not be a worse offense. It would score points, right? It could not be worse. I just get frustrated because you gotta. Joseph Manjack did not play. I don't know what the status on his shoulder is. Again, he did not play against Iowa State, and I guess that does hurt some. But Mekhi Muse did fine. Boogie Johnson made mistakes, but he was always going to play. He's not the kind of guy you're not going to play. I think Marquise Shoulders, it looked like, was also hurt as far as the wide receiver room goes. Malik Carr, I don't think, had a catch. He did have a penalty, though. Yeah, so, yeah. Bad football, bad offense. And we talked in the first segment, second segment, something about quarterbacks limiting this whole thing. You don't really add a quarterback midseason, and so that makes it tough. I do think that Austin Carlisle, the Ridge Point kid, he had a good junior, he's having a great senior year at high school. He could be a game changer if he could really come in as a freshman, some Johnny Manziel type energy. And then they've got a special kid committed to the 2026 class. I don't know if he comes in and starts as a freshman or quarterback or not, but he will come in as a freshman and have to play somewhere. He's that kind of athlete. I think he can do the Tannehill thing where he starts off as a receiver his freshman year and plays quarterback as sophomore and then on. But I don't know. People look at the future QB here. What's it? Oh, Boati says, why not look at the future QB? Smith is not it. Houston's 1-4. What else do you have to lose? I think the trick is as we're seeing is that the future QB is not on this team. I think McMickle had a great spring game. And frankly, in the spring, I thought he probably had the best spring game of the quarterbacks. Donovan did not play, I guess, but Caleb McMichael had, I thought, the best spring game. He tore his ACL over the summer, right? And so we won't get to see him this year. Based on his spring game, I actually probably would have asked to see him at this point if he were healthy enough to play. Kid was good, and he got hurt. That's the way that goes. Alfred points out here, as Alfred's a passionate fan. Alfred points out the future QB hasn't set foot on campus yet. I think that's the place we wrap there, is because I think he's right that the truth is that as you're building this program, and as much excitement as we all had about this program, the present tense, the present version is not a very good one. It's got a defense that is, again, as good as anyone in the Big 12. We talked through the conference very quickly, but it's as good a defense as anyone in the Big 12. And that's impressive in year one with a bunch of transfers and Willie Fritz. That's impressive. Props to Shea Wood on that one. Congrats to that. The offense has to hold up their end of the bargain. And that is not getting shut out by Cincinnati. That is not getting shut out by Iowa State at home. The offense needs to score points. And we'll be back here each and every day talking about it. Also, better news is that in basketball, things are really good. Kingston Fleming was on campus over the weekend visiting. Already posted on Instagram. He already posted on Instagram about it. He seemed to like it. He is, we talked about it a little on Friday. Go check out that episode. But he is like the number one point guard in the country on a lot of rankings. And they already got the number one shooting guard in the country in a lot of rankings committed. That would be the number one backcourt by default in the country. Would be phenomenal. Anyway, that's good news. We'll see if any more shakes out on that. We're breaking things down here each and every day at Locked On Cougs. Hit subscribe, hit the bell so you know we're live. We'll be live after every game. We can be, like when Spectrum cooperates. Thank you again, Locked On Cougs, a primary Locked On podcast. Now it means your team every day. Go Cougs.